Thank the Lord, I thought this day would never come. So, hi, my name is Reegan. For those who don't know, this is kind of like a ramble, I guess, because as much as I've been a Whovian for best part of my young adult life, definitely before then actually, because I started from Eccleston. But this is the first time that I've been really properly diving into Classic Who. So without further ado, we are diving into Classic Who Season 4, Ramble. So the first, I guess, serial that we've got in that is not only very notably the last bit of William Hartnell's Doctor before he regenerates, but we also have the first appearance of the Cybermen, but specifically the Mondasian Cybermen. And I'm going to say straight off the bat that, and I'm conflicted whether I'd say that they're my favourite Cyberman design of all time. Don't know if I'll quite go that far, but I think at least from everything I've seen, whether it be like snapshots or merchandise or anything that I've seen when I've watched ahead, they are my favourite Classic Who Cyberman design. I think what really kind of is the creepy aspect for me is the fabric face, which you don't, as far as I can tell, you don't see in any other Cyberman design. And it almost feels like the skull's behind it, and that's the kind of motion that you get against the bag. Yeah, so for any Classic Who, for any Mon Who peeps out there, you probably would have seen the Mondasian Cybermen when they made their comeback in Peter Capaldi's run. And without any spoilers, there's a rather brutal reveal with a character in a Mondasian Cyberman. But you also get to see, I guess, the Mondasian Cybermen in their early transformation, when they're just like people sitting down with drip machines, and some of them are like tapping away on this button, and the companion goes over and turns up the volume on this, I guess, this like speech system. And it's saying things like "kill me" and just pain, pain, pain. And I think that's something that the Cybermen, for me at least, and the most interesting thing is the brutality behind it, and the realization and the just the sheer horror that the individuals go through during the transformation or while they're already Cybermen. But yeah, the Mondasian Cybermen, there's not a lot to say about this episode for me, really, apart from the fact that they make their appearance. We get to learn about where they come from. It's like a sister planet, and their planet's all like used up of resources, so they plan to make Earth the next kind of Mondas. But no, they're just really interesting. They move clunkily, as I think Cybermen should. Their speech is very reminiscent, is very similar to that we see in Capaldi's episode. Yeah, I just think the uniformity and their design is stellar, and I would love to see more of the Mondasian Cybermen. If I can make a plea to Russell T Davies or whoever the showrunner is at the time when the Cybermen do come back, I would love it to be maybe just a slight reworking of the Mondasian Cybermen, because I suppose the thing that makes them unattractive to a lot of new Whovians is the bulky chest piece. But apart from that, the rest of it is just really, really sinister and really, really, really interesting. So, the Doctor regenerates. From what I can tell, it's just kind of like, I mean, he goes through a bit of the ringer during this storyline, but he doesn't necessarily get shot or anything, at least not how I remember. But I suppose you also get, that's the way that they were able to slot in I think it's Once Upon a Time Lord or something, where they have the actor who played Argus Filch and who played William Hartnell in An Adventure Through Time and Space almost reprised the role as the first Doctor, but in universe with Peter Capaldi's 12th. And then and then after that episode, he goes into his TARDIS and kind of collapses. And the regeneration is very interesting. It's just like a shot of the face, and then you hear the TARDIS, and then the face fades into Patrick Troughton. I think I want to say straight out the bat, and I think it is only with this first series of episodes, the Doctor. The second Doctor talks about the Doctor being someone else other than him, which I don't know whether that was more like confusion with the regeneration, because I don't imagine that would be very reassuring to his companions, but it was just an interesting thing to have him kind of talk about the Doctor as if it wasn't him. And of course, this episode, or this bulk of episodes, is The Power of the Daleks. And what a series of episodes it is. So the way that I consumed it, and it was the only way that it was available on BritBox, was in animation form. And I'm going to say straight off the bat, I've got a few shots that I'll hopefully put up during this review of the live action version of it. But the animation version of it, definitely, I think they're spookier. I think they're way spookier. It's still in black and white, but they're so much more spooky, especially with the way that they animate it. So they've got a lot of 3D animation TARDIS around the console, specifically the bit that goes up and down the central column. But then everyone else is 2D, and then until you meet the Daleks, they're also 3D. But where everyone else moves quite kind of juddery and almost like a paper cutout. I don't know what the animation style is called, but it's like where you have like a paper person where it's the main portion of the body, and then you have like a hand that's on joints and you use a little stick. The animation feels a lot like that. But the Daleks are animated so smoothly, and I think that's what kind of adds to their sinister nature, is that they're so separate almost from the animation style of everyone else. And I want to say straight off the bat that it seems a real shame that a lot of the Dalek stories that we get in modern Who, it's clearly just recycled plots from the classic, because I had no idea that the Victory of the Daleks plot, which is a Matt Smith episode, where you get to see the Daleks integrated into, not quite into society, but into like a military wartime situation, and they're like, some of the best lines, and I know this is some of the favourites around the Whovian community, but like the "Would you care for some tea?" and stuff like that. You do actually see the Daleks in Power of the Daleks like handing out refreshments and stuff in exactly the same way, and yeah, I think some Whovians have said this, and I think I semi-agree. I mean, obviously you get the kind of, I mean, I suppose it would be slightly different to those who watched it when it was televised, because they'd have nothing else that follows on from it to be able to reassure them of this point. But I can imagine those who may have watched the episode live would actually think and actually question whether the Daleks are evil, because there's a long game that they play with this colony of humans. They just they completely are servants and will just do anything that they're asked for, to the point of where they'll happily have their guns removed and things like that. But I've skipped ahead slightly. So they find the ship, and there's 3 Daleks on board, and it's such a spooky shot, because you've got like all the Daleks covered in webbing and dust, and then you get one of the shots of one of the Dalek embryos like squeezing its way under the gap in a door. Yeah, it's just a really, really, really good story. It's probably one of my favourite Dalek stories at all. You know, including modern Who. It's really, really fun. You actually get again, this is not a new idea when I thought it was, because in Daleks in Manhattan, a David Tennant episode, you get to see that the Daleks are attempting to survive in any way that they can, and one of their plans is to create artificial embryos, and one of them David Tennant finds in the sewers. But these Daleks, where they've got the scientific facilities to hand, and they've got all the technology they need, they end up essentially assembling almost like a Attack of the Clones style droid refinery, a construction line of Daleks, and they end up having plenty of units ready to kind of take over when the time comes. But it's just really fascinating to see the procedure behind that, the assembly line, and they're definitely one of my favourite designs of Daleks as well. The classic Who Daleks, I in a way prefer quite a lot to modern Who Daleks. There's just something more sinister about them. And I think that's something that they, slight tangent, but I think that's something that they actually dived into when they were doing the Victory of the Daleks Dalek design. They sport a lot of the classic Who parts of the Daleks, like the heightened, I don't know what you call it, like the lip around the bottom of the Dalek skirt. It's a lot higher than the modern Time War Daleks. So it's definitely an iconic design, and it's again something that, you know, I've said it in Doctor Who episodes. I think I've said it during these, but I'm fairly sure that there is some kind of agreement where the Daleks have to come back once a season, and if they did and they were looking to do a new design, I think I would want them to kind of fall back onto this classic Who design, because it's just far more sinister and far more iconic, which is what we want for the Daleks and the Cybermen. I think that's a formula that applies to both of them. So I think the next point we move on to is, and this caught me off guard because I think I was watching this or just in the background while at work, and I thought my iPad had broken, or just that there was something up with the internet or whatever, which is a very modern day response where it's like there's something wrong with the technology, and it's not, because this was the first episode that at least I encountered where there was audio, there were visuals, but they were stills. They were stills of the episode, and this serial is called The Underwater Menace, and straight out the bat, it's a bit of a slow burn, and it's I hate to say it, because obviously when you're watching stuff from this period in time, especially for something that had like a shoestring budget, you want to be kind of open-minded about the quality, but I'm sorry, but that first episode where it is just stills is virtually unwatchable. It is just it's so difficult to get. It was so difficult to get through. But I'm very glad that I did, and I'm obviously still pushing through because I watched the rest of the episode, and it was a really interesting, all the rest of the serial, and it was a really interesting premise. The idea of finding the lost city of Atlantis, and that there are these fish people who have gills and stuff, but they can no longer talk, and they're essentially used to collect food from under the water and things like that. I will say, something about classic Who is, if it isn't these really shrill noises of the different creatures, it's these really interesting musical scores that they put together, and it tends to be like just a repeating track or something that seems quite simple in its musical composition. But this one really kind of caught me off guard because it's like an almost 3-minute series of clips of just these underwater people swimming around, and like it's just the music and the bubbling sounds, and they are pulling some faces. I'm gonna give myself a bit of editing to do. Face gone. Yeah, that's the kind of faceage that's going on during those episodes, and it's weird, but just interesting old Who stuff. And it does get a bit weird because I think one of the plans is to rise up Atlantis, but the scientist who is heading that then says, oh, if I can't do that, then I'll destroy the world. And his main kind of justification for that is like, scientists crave power, and this would be the ultimate like power play, I guess. I can't remember whether he had any plan to survive that, and if not, it would seem a bit weird, because then who would be around to appreciate it, or who would tell anyone about it? Any other species that happened across what was left of the Earth would be like, well, that's gone, and just move on, and they wouldn't understand why or what happened. But no, it was an interesting serial. I don't think it was the best in season 4, but it was interesting, and I hear tell that they might be planning to animate it at some point. I hear a lot of Whovians don't like it, and I can understand why, because it's a bit of a long haul, but it's an interesting premise for sure. And like I say, if nothing else, that 2 to 3 minute clip of the fish people underwater is brilliant. And if you, I'm sure you can. I know you can find it online because I have, and it's just fun. So we do actually get another Cyberman story, and this one is of Cybermen on the moon. It's like a moon-based story. Like I said at the beginning of this, the Cybermen are nowhere near as good as the Mondasian Cybermen, and they're clunky, and I don't like the voices either. Yeah, they're just not for me, to be honest. And I'm already missing the Mondasian Cybermen, to be honest. It's just they're so much better, so much more iconic, so much more sinister, and I think that's something that the Cybermen should be, especially because there's this landscape shot during the serial where the Cybermen are like marching across the moon's surface, and yeah, I mean it's weird because I think in the version that I've got on BritBox, it's the climax that is part of that is animated, and then the next episode is live action, and it's a weird transition. And I do think at least these Cybermen work better in animated form, because at least as far as I can remember, this serial does jump between live action and animated, and out of the two, at least with this Cyberman design, it's better in animation. There's a unbelievably amusing part so I was definitely watching this serial not only at work, but I was actually in an office space, and I audibly laughed out loud because there's a scene where one of the viewing windows gets breached, and like classic space alien style, everything's getting sucked out, and the resolution to that is someone grabs a silver serving tray and just puts it over the glass and the breach, and it's fine. And that's not how science works, and it's brilliant. And obviously, I don't know whether they would have known that back then, but I'm willing to wager that even if they did, they probably still would have done it, because it's Doctor Who cheesiness, and it's brilliant. And yeah, it was really, really funny. But there's not a lot to kind of say about that storyline. It's a Cyberman storyline. It's an interesting setting, I suppose. But apart from that, there's the Mondasian Cyberman story was definitely more compelling out of the two. And I'm going to say straight off the bat that out of all the companions that we've had in Classic Who so far, Jamie is my favourite. I genuinely really, really like him. It's nice to have Scott on board, and he seems a bit more together than. And this is the thing. This is a Classic Who fault, and it was probably a fault of the times, not only with Doctor Who, but a lot of the women characters are written just to be damsels in distress and a bit, if I'm honest, a bit pathetic when it comes to any kind of crisis situation, where Jamie, at least from the way that I perceived him, he didn't seem to be so helpless when it came to a desperate situation. I just like him. Jamie and the Doctor's energy, or Patrick Troughton's Doctor, the way that they work off each other is fun, and it feels quite natural. And yeah, I just really enjoying their dynamic together. But the last, at least the last note that I kind of made in the last serial that I saw of season 4 was the Macra Terror. And of course, for those who enjoy a bit of Modern Who and have been watching it since its revival in the early 2000s, will know the Macra from season 3, episode Gridlock. And so I don't know if they appear again, because when the Doctor's talking about having met them before, he talks about them being empire builders. There's a little bit of that's nodding towards this, because it's clear that the civilization and like the computer mainframe that essentially governs this settlement is the Macra. But they still, and I don't, because I've talked to I think his alias is John Smith. It's weird when we don't go by the names that we actually have. Thank God I don't do that. But when I was talking to him about the Macra Terror, he seemed to think that you don't see the Macra, at least not in a full body form, but at least in this animated form you definitely do. So I don't know whether that's different to what we saw or what was originally televised. It's also worth noting that for whatever reason they decided to animate this in colour. I don't know whether it was just to give the Macra a bit more of a sinister elements in them. If the images work, I'll throw up some now. There's like these almost like Jawa-esque yellow glowing eyes that emerge. They're very slow, which I think is, again, that's what makes that's what makes Doctor Who villains and antagonists the most interesting when they're slow. So good examples of that would be the Cybermen, the Daleks, the Silence. I'm trying to think of other interesting slow Whovian monsters. I mean, those are the three. Well, I suppose the Weepy Angels, to a certain extent, they're especially when they're weak, they're quite slow to kill you. But I suppose blink and they jump, so then they ain't that slow. But yeah, definitely a slow creature. It makes them far more interesting. But as far as I can tell, they seem exactly the same in terms of their temperament as they were in Gridlock, and which is weird because a lot of people didn't like and specifically stated that the version we got in Gridlock was worse than the version we got in Classic Who. So I am holding out to see if the Macra make another return that depict them slightly differently. But as far as I could tell, they were virtually the same. But lovely to see. I thought the Macra, as someone who likes sea creatures and anything that resembles something from the sea, or anything aquatic, it was fun to see them again, and doing a bit more than they did in Gridlock. But I don't know whether it was the way that perhaps we didn't get the follow-ups to the episodes where they may have been lost or whatever, but at least from what I saw, the episode just kind of, or the serial just kind of ended with the pan away of the city and they hadn't really left. I might have to double back and see whether I missed anything. I love that the Doctor sometimes has this recorder that he plays, and he'll sometimes do it like during conversation, and it's just a wonderful thing that he does. And he doesn't play it well for the most part, so it's sometimes quite annoying to those who are around him. But no, it's just a fun little character piece, and it's just something that he found when he was rummaging through the trunk, I think pretty much immediately after his regeneration. But yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying Patrick Troughton for sure. I think I might actually say that I'm enjoying him more than William Hartnell at the moment. I enjoy his cheekiness. I enjoy the fact that he feels a bit more believable when he's getting angry or frustrated at a situation. William Hartnell, I found towards the end, he got not silly, but there was a lot of like the and just like which I suppose was fun for him being like an older Doctor, because the alternative was just grumpy, which I think was kind of him at the beginning. But I find this Doctor a bit more well-rounded and just a bit more fun to watch on screen. No disrespect to the memory of William Hartnell at all, or his performance. I think it matched his age as a character and beautifully kicked off a series that we all love. Just out of the two, I think I prefer Patrick Troughton, at least from what I've seen so far. But thank you very much for watching. Please do, if you have a moment, leave a comment. It would be lovely to hear what you think, even if it's negative. I'd love to, just throw it at me. I can take it. But also anything like any questions or anything that might be a bit fun, we'll read out on one of the podcasts, and it would just be nice to start to build a community with you guys, because I think with all the different fandoms that I enjoy, whether it be things like Star Wars, Star Trek, Dark Crystal, yeah, the Doctor Who fandom is the one that I've enjoyed interacting with the most, and I'd love to create one that's kind of under the Dirty Old Tardis brand, or Dirty Old Tardis name, and have that as almost like a section of the podcast and stuff, just having a bit of interaction. But please, if you have a moment, it'd be lovely to hear from you, and just thank you so much for taking the time listening to me ramble, because it's what we do here when it's just me, a microphone, a camera, and a couple of sheets of plywood that are for whatever reason stacked against that wall. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll be continuing the weekly upload. If you have any requests for things, I'm being oddly unspecific at the moment, but just, yeah, whether it be like a review or something, again, just throw in the comments. but we should hopefully be doing a recording like we did for the 3 specials of at least the first 2 episodes of Shooting Outwall's run. I don't know what we're going to do for the others, but I'll definitely do like a full episode breakdown like I did for the Church of Ruby Roads, and that will go up on the channel as well. But there's plenty of Doctor Who out at the moment, so I hope you are enjoying what's out at the moment, and until the next time, we're travelling into time and space.